Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas. Sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you to grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet. I'm in Burrawang in New South Wales, and it is coming up to 9:45 on Monday morning, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the studio Stephen Douglas, who's also on the same time zone, and he's in rural Victoria. He's in Ballarat in Victoria. And Stephen, welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Great to have you.
Good morning, David. Yeah, same time zones. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me on this morning. Really looking forward to our time together.
Now, Stephen, for our Australian friends, they'll detect that you have an English accent. Our American listeners and viewers may not be able to tell the difference between an Australian and an English accent, but you're originally from England. So tell us a story about what brought you to Australia and what got you into the dental arena as well. I know you because you're the whitening guru in Australia, but you've got a history of other parts of dentistry as well. So tell us how you came to be living in Ballarat and working in the dental space.
It's I'm trying to do the short version or the long version. I remember a film a while ago. There's a scene in the film. There's always a girl. And I remember back in 2000, 2003, there's a girl. And I remember she had the whitest teeth you've ever seen in your life. They were just, you'd open the door bright. And I said to the girl, so how are your teeth so white? They're amazing. I had no knowledge or involvement in the dental world at that time. In fact, I spent 25 years in the paper industry in Europe. And she said, I buy Crest White strips from America. I went, that sounds good. She says, yes, I buy them wholesale and I sell them to my family and friends. I said, so she showed me a box and it was Crest White. What was it? It was Crest White Strips Supreme for your American friends. They'll know that product very well. And it was 12% hydrogen peroxide. And I used to say, now I know a little bit about whitening. I said, no wonder her teeth were white. But when the teeth got that little, they went too chalky, they dried out, they'd lost the translucency. But with my marketing background, I was thinking, there's an idea. Because in those days, teeth whitening anybody could sell it. It didn't make any difference. There was no legislation back in the UK. So I said, well, there's a possibility here. So we actually started importing Crest White strips from wholesalers in America and started off as family and friends. And then we started to run some Facebook, Google, PPC campaigns. We bought the URL crestwhitestrips.co.uk. We're very proud of that one. And in those days, Google Ads, it was basically free. It would cost 20 pence, it was 40 cents, and to run an ad. And we'd get 2 or 3 orders a night. It was quite good. And then 6 months later, we're top of the natural listings and we'd get 4 or 5 orders a night. And we're literally doing our day jobs, packing boxes in post bags and sending them out. And after 3 or 4 years of this, we were doing 100 boxes a day. And in those old money terms, selling it at, it was like £80 or $160 because you could. And we thought, well, this is really good. So we gave up our day jobs and literally that's all we did. And I got my, passion for whitening then. When I started making videos for the public, there was Crest White Strips Supreme, Professional, Pain Shield, Sensitivity. I'd make videos for the public. Brilliant. And then the legislation changed. which is a bit of a blow. And so what we'd been doing, I was a big cricketer, and I was playing cricket in the UK. And then in the summer months, because the day job was so flexible, I'd come out to Australia and play a bit of cricket and go back to the UK and play a bit of cricket. And although I wasn't very good in Australia. The tracks are too hard, fast and bouncy. And when you're used to very slow, low English tracks, it was a bit difficult when the ball's flying around your ears in Australia. I wasn't very good in Australia. And then they changed the legislation and we couldn't do it anymore. And in fact, I remember one time Procter & Gamble actually wrote to us and said, you will give us your URL, your domain. That's ours. We own it. We were so scared. We went, well, okay, we shouldn't have done that. That was a big mistake. So we started doing it here in Australia because it was legal again in those days. And funnily enough, that actually leads on to some of the problems we have with teeth whitening in Australia because the legislation's really poor. So we basically played cricket over here. And on one of my trips here, I met my Australian now wife and decided, well, this is far better than the UK. And I'm here resident since 2009, sunny Ballarat as it is this morning. I think what happened was we got resident here, started this passion for teeth whitening and doing a little bit online. Legislation was still unclear. And one of my contacts in the UK, who's now my CEO, said, Steve, we're looking about setting up quick straight teeth in Australia, which is orthodontics for general dentists. And he said, we've got such success in the UK, the expats coming over to WA onto version. Do you want to help us? And I said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. So we set up simple orthodontic courses. We bring over our specialist ortho from the UK. He trained dentists about simple ortho, so that's indirect bonding. And but part of that was every kit we'd send out to practice, we'd give them 2 syringes of bleach, whitening gel, still in whitening. And we did this for a few years, but obviously, as you know, the clear aligner market has really taken over much of the indirect bonding and to some degree direct bonding market. But we had access to boutique. And in 2015, 16, it was launched in the UK. And that's how I joined that got back into whitening, so to speak, David, when boutique was launched in the UK in 2015, 16. But then it's dental because of this change in legislation.
Wow, that's a long way round. So I know plenty of people who've met girls from other countries and relocated as a result, Stephen. But it's nice to see that it's bringing talent to Australia. So let's talk about the boutique whitening industry in Australia in dentistry and how you've managed to position yourself and your company as the number one, really, because it's the whitening that I see, it's the glamorous packaging, the glamorous presentation of the product that really helps to market that product effectively. Is that what I see as being correct?
It's a good question. I mean, it is in a roundabout way because it separates itself from the rest of the other products, which are mainly clinical, but there's a reason behind that. So the backstory is our owner, Pal Semi, in 2016, looked at the global market for whitening and said, what's missing? And a lot of the products that people see are clinical. Now, because of my previous history, I've sold all those products direct to the public and to practices, whether it's Philips Zoom, Opalescence, Colgate, etc. I've sold all those products as well as now boutique. Boutique just becomes my preferred choice after all these years of being involved in whitening, simply because of this value add, the luxury. Gel's the gel, peroxide's the peroxide. What most manufacturers won't tell you is whitening gel is whitening gel. There's no magical ingredient. There's no fairy dust. But if you don't know what to do with it, then you've got a problem. So, and when you look at the Australian teeth whitening industry, it's an industry that's led by non-dental. This is the huge problem because ultimately the legislation here is terrible for practices. If you look at the UK market, dental practices, 6%, that's it. Hence why I couldn't do what I was doing back in 2004, because what they said was European legislation up to 0.01% hydrogen peroxide. Anybody can do it. Well, it doesn't work. 6% dental only, proper legislation. But here in Australia, I think driven by the pharmaceutical industry, but that's my opinion, is companies and people can sell up to 6% hydrogen peroxide. And this legislation was in place until August 2021, when there was a tweak in the legislation and said, well, if as a dental practice, if you believe it's in the best interest of your patients, you can prescribe over 6% hydrogen peroxide. But the problem is that the marketplace is $120 million in Australia. So that's anything from a whitening toothpaste to, say, Philips Zoom, let's say, at the other end of the spectrum. But most of that is luxury cosmetic products sold by non-dental. So the way boutique fits is it is that luxury cosmetic product, but overseen by a clinician or by a dental practitioner. So you get both together. You get the clinical expertise and you get the luxury product, which makes it a win-win for the patient. And it's about the buying experience for the patient. It's the value add. If somebody's going to spend, I don't know, $450, $500, they want that buying experience. It's value for money. No longer can you give them a few syringes and a brown paper bag with the trays in. You've actually got to present that luxury product. So they walk out with value for money and with a world-class system run by the dental practice behind it to support it.
Yeah, no, really, really important that, and there's an obvious example out there in the phone industry. That's how the iPhone became so big so quick. It was that you got the box, whether you bought it in the store or whether it came in the mail, the packaging was identical, and it was an experience to open it step by step, not just tear the packaging apart, but be careful because the packaging was done so well that you wanted to preserve it. And so that's what I see with boutique whitening. And I also see now, as you mentioned, some aligner companies are also presenting their aligners better than just, here's your aligners in a plastic bag with a Ziploc, which one company seemed to get away with for so long. They're happy to pay more if they feel that they're getting the value. And I'm glad that boutique has come into that space because they're definitely leading the way.
You make a very good point there, again, underpinning the word value, because, there's a wide spectrum of prices that dental practices supply their patients with whitening. So we're talking take-home whitening with trays. The average price in Australia is around $450. But then I've got some practices who will be supplying at, say, $295 and some supplying at $600 for effectively the same product or treatment plan, because that's what it is. And they think that it's all price driven, and it's not. They say, well, let's run an offer, let's drop our price, let's run some PPC campaigns. If a patient doesn't value the treatment plan, which is effectively the outcome of the treatment plan, it doesn't matter whether your price is $300 or $600. If they don't value it, they're not going to pay for it. So dropping your price to try and get a promotion to get more whitening treatments is yes, you'll see a spike in treatments, but it's not sustainable over a long period of time because it's got a cost related to it. But if the patient values the outcome, it's like, I'll say to when I run the training programs for practices, I'll say to the dental audience, I'll say, well, when people whiten their teeth, what are they buying from you? And they'll go, well, whiter teeth. No, but what are they buying from you? What are they investing in? Teeth whitening. I think just go a bit further. What are they investing in? You go, confidence. Okay, confidence. What else? Self-esteem. Yep, absolutely. And looking more attractive, because ultimately that's what whiter teeth does. They're not buying Invisalign. They're not buying boutique. They're investing in the outcome. And that's the value. And if they value what that does to them, then they'll pay the money, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's the truth. And I think one of the reasons I reached out to you just recently to speak to you on the podcast was because of a social media post where you were berating dentists for thinking that their competitors in selling whitening was other dentists selling whitening, whereas it's not. It's what else can I buy with my $500? Can I buy a nice meal? Can I buy a nice watch? Can I buy a nice jacket? Those are the choices, and whitening is just a lifestyle choice that you've got to focus them on. And of course, they're not buying the whitening; they're buying what the whitening does for them, which is really, really important. And a lot of dentists don't see that. When I talk to dentists about what are they actually doing, they're always in the weeds of the procedure as opposed to the result of what they do. And so I liked how you were on that wavelength, because that again sets you apart from the others in the clinical space. Like I can just imagine a group of whitening companies saying, well, our whitening is better because we've got this and we've got this and we've got this. It's not that at all. It's how you make them feel.
No.
And how do they keep that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you were talking to me before we started recording, you're talking about audits and how you help dentists in terms of, I guess, getting their patients to spend money on whitening. Now, every dental practice has, let's say, 1,000 patients. What percentage of those patients would need whitening because their teeth aren't as white as they can be?
It's a good question. This is the bit I feel where practices, and I always give dental practices the get out of jail free card. It's nobody's fault. If whitening is not part of dental school, how do you know? How do you learn? Some may have paid to go on courses, great. But generally, as a practice, there's no support, no education, no training, no mentoring. They listen to manufacturers, to reps, whoever it may be, or they Google it or chat GPT these days. Or it's what we do here at this practice. So it becomes the way. And the problem is because it's not taught, the way is actually, again, it's nobody's fault. It's not actually that great. And what happens is practices struggle to meet patients' expectations. Oh, which patients want, they want porcelain white in an hour. Well, sorry, it's not going to happen. So they always go, well, let's change product. Let's get that Philip Zoom. That's the best one. I've heard good stuff about that. Or Opal Essence, they've got this magical, and they'll chop and change the brands, which breeds mistrust in the first place with patients because in other words, what you're doing. And it's not the gel. You need a pure gel. They're all very good. But ultimately, if you haven't got a system, then it's pointless. You haven't got an actual process to go through. It's the example, if practice A does really, really well with teeth whitening, has lots of patients and great results, and practice B doesn't, and the gel's predominantly the same, it's not a gel problem. It's a system problem. It's a process and protocols because it's not taught. So what practices do is look at the product first. What they need to do is look at what they're doing now. And that's where we run the audits, where we say to dental practices, if this is of interest to you, and we always share with them the opportunity, then let's look at what you're doing now. Let's look at what's working well. Let's look at the friction points. How many adult patients do you see on a daily basis? Because when we start delving into numbers, this lost millions within the industry in Australia. And I'm talking millions of dollars. So, for example, if you take a practice that sees, let's just say, 50 adult patients a week. So what we know in Australia from industry statistics, the waters are a little bit muddy. EDA did some research in 2022, 50,000 adults. It was about 25% have a problem with tooth color, smile, appearance. If you back that up with what you can find with manufacturers' numbers in Australia, then you look at the market spend on teeth whitening, but that is very broad. But then you take my 5 years here, nearly 6 now of what I know, the numbers come back the same. So the average in Australia is most practices start less than 2 whitening treatments a week. It's just shambolic. It's just, anyway, I'll get annoyed with that, but that's what they do. But if you see 50 adult patients a week, around 20 to 25, I think it's the higher number because when you factor in orthodontics, crowns, veneers, implants, that are all whitening patients as well, because that should feature whitening at some point. It's about 25%. So you just do the maths. If you're seeing 50 adult patients a week, you're working 48 weeks a year, there's potentially from your existing patients around 350 people who will whiten their teeth because they have a problem with tooth color. The challenge is we don't know how to find them. One of the things we teach on our training program is how to find these patients. And then you add on, well, what do you normally sell your take-home whitening at? Oh, 450. Right. So you've got 350 potential existing patients, no cost to market, just an investment of time, multiplied by $450 is your take-home price with trays, that you have a total revenue of $150,000 to $200,000. That's total revenue. Right, that's about $65,000 to $70,000 per year for the next 3 to 4 years, because it'll take you that long if you see 2 to 3 a week. If you've got a 6-chair practice and you're seeing 100 adult patients a week, you're losing $250,000, if not more. Then that money, what we know, David, is that money will be spent elsewhere, but not with other practices. It's going to be spent at the salons, the spas, the hairdressers, the supermarkets, online pharmacies, illegal websites who are leading the education of whitening in Australia. And that's a big mistake. So that's why we run the audit, find out what they're doing, show them perhaps a better way to run a whitening system, And if they're happy, then run a full training program for the practice where we train everybody, reception right through to owner, because everybody should have the clinical expertise and confidence.
I love that, Stephen. You've basically pointed out to every dentist watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, that between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 patients in a practice are unhappy with the colour of their teeth and would invest in a teeth whitening process. They're there anyway. They're going to the dentist anyway. They're just not mentioning it, but in the back of their head, if you ask them, they would say, yes, I'd do it. I've just run a similar investigation into the suitability of the average dental patient for clear aligners to straighten slightly malaligned teeth. It's somewhere between 50 and 70% of patients have a tooth or an incisal edge that they're not happy with and would be happy to invest in clear aligners because it's not braces. It's the same. Years ago, I met a dentist in America. None of the patients in his practice came for hygiene visits more than twice a year. I said, you have created the perio-free zone in America. I was literally having a go at him because there's perio there. He's just not identifying it. He's too busy with his other patients to actually focus on the ones he could double his. You see what you see and you don't see what you don't see. And so it's people like you who come in and say, this stuff is there. You just got to open your eyes and start identifying it. And we all know that this happens. When we buy a new TV, all of a sudden we see the ads for the TV. When we're thinking of buying a new car, damn, there's that car pulls up beside us in the traffic. Forever. It's the same in this instance. You've just got to open your eyes and look at it, and it appears. And then you've got to do it. I was going to ask you, because there's got to be some rinse and repeat in whitening, hasn't there? Because obviously the best results are gained by having the in-chair whitening, first of all, to get you up to that white colour, and then keep it there with the home gels, because sometimes the home gel process does take a long time and people get exhausted by it. Is that correct? Is that still the way it goes?
I'll just put it right out there and say no.
No.
It's not the right way to go. It's not the right way to whiten teeth. That's very much the manufacturers. If you go back to the early 2000s, everything was Philips Zoom. Market leaders, in-chair whitening, brilliant. Get great outcomes. And this is where the industry went wrong, because it's very easy for the dental industry. You know, they could charge $2,000. They'd sit a person in the chair. They get some kind of outcome. And I'll leave that pregnant pause there. And patients will be like, this is amazing. And what happened was the dental industry took their eye off the ball because there was no legislation in these days. So what happened was non-dental came around, and the salons, the whitening booths, non-dental, and they started to take the market from dental, who got lazy, didn't invest in the education, didn't make it part of your dental program, dental school. And the price dropped because it got very competitive. And now if you look at in-chair whitening now in Australia, it's around $650, $750. And that's challenging to make any kind of profit because you've tied somebody up for 90 minutes, if not longer, with a patient. I always have, when we run our training programs, I will say to the room, we're not anti-in-chair as a company. For context, David, we're owned by dental professionals. Our CEOs are dentists. Our team in the UK are oral health therapists. We understand whitening as much as you can when whitening is still not taught. We spend a lot of time on it. And I'll go, well, how can you treat intrinsic tooth stains in 60 minutes? Another pregnant pause. And what happens is 60 minutes with the bleaching, regardless of the gel strength, you get a few shades. But the secret to great whitening is contact time with peroxide and the enamel. So the longer you get, the better the outcome. There is a combination where you can use in-chair followed by your take-home. But ultimately what happens is, another leading question I'll say to practices is, well, when do you take your after photograph for in-chair? Well, of course, as soon as the patient sits up and the patient looks up and they go, wow, that's amazing. Brilliant. David, I love you. You're fantastic. But what happens is over the next 4 days, you get the rebound. You get the rehydration of the tooth and the patient's, just spent $800. And then you get the top-up syringes and the trays they've already had to manufacture for the patient in the first place, which is back to take home whitening. So it's an option. It's for patients who I believe generally don't have time. The wedding's on Saturday. They believe perhaps media, money's irrelevant. Here's my credit card. That's fine. That's an option. But as a practice, no more than 30% or less, ideally. But what we know, regardless of the manufacturer, doesn't matter which manufacturer, same peroxide. If you can get 14 to 20 days of take-home whitening, either by day or by night's better, you'll get most patients to B1, generally within a 20-day period. And then you'll perhaps have to top up once a year because you've got that time on the tooth, the contact time, that will bleach enamel and get it really, really white. Whereas as in-chair, you actually haven't. You can run a combination, which is fine. It's an option. If that makes the patient feel happy, no problem, but it's not the best solution. It just isn't at the end of the day. Great concept, great idea. Manufacturer studies will tell you it's the best, but I'm sorry, I just go, you need contact time. You really do. And patients need to be educated by the dentist to say, this is the best way. Whitening the comfort and convenience of your own home is going to take you a couple of weeks. There's no magical ingredient. There's no fast fix for this. There isn't.
Excuse me, that's daily then for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, the more you do it, the whiter the teeth will go. Yeah, you can miss days, of course you can. It just takes you a bit longer at the end of the day. Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, that's great advice because there's nothing. I think the problem with the in-chair is that you're putting on the gum guard on the on each teeth, and then you still get leakage underneath, and so you get the burning of the tissue. You don't get that with take-home whitening, right?
You can't, listen, we're not ruling out sensitivity. You can get sensitivity. It's the nature of the beast that we're dealing with. And there's no hard and fast rule of which patient it will apply to. You can be more selective in gel strength and wear time if the patient may have some inherent problems. But you take precautions, and by using a desensitizing toothpaste a week prior, for example, you tend to reduce or minimize the impact of sensitivity. The one thing with sensitivity for home whitening is to don't be reactive, be proactive. Do it first and then start your whitening treatment and maintain it during the process. It's just the nature of what we do with peroxide at the end of the day.
All right. So, and it's all 6%.
Well, that's actually all you need in reality. If you look at Professor Van Hayward, you'll probably know him yourself, David. He's classed as the godfather of whitening in America. And you look at his clinical studies, he would always refer back to 6% hydrogen peroxide, 16% carbamide peroxide. And that's probably as much as you'll ever need, really. But manufacturers have driven this bigger, better, faster, stronger. And the reality is it doesn't, because it's got too many side effects of primarily sensitivity. When I run my training programs, I'll say to the room, so which do you believe initially would get you the better outcomes, 9% hydrogen peroxide or 6%? And the brain will go, well, 9%, of course, because it's stronger. But the reality is that's the wrong answer, because it will be 6%, because you can wear 6% for up to 90 minutes, but you can't wear 9% for more than 30. I mean, you could try, but your patient's not going to love you because there's that added risk of tooth sensitivity. And with home whitening, it's a bit sensitive, any chance a patient's going to stop because it's a bit sensitive or it might hurt, this is patient complaints. And one of them is managing this sensitivity. So 9%, you have those added risks involved in take-home whitening. Again, compliance is so important. There are various things you have to put in place. Not difficult, but things to put in place to make sure the patient fundamentally finishes the treatment plan.
Now, we all know that scene. Was it Friends or was it Seinfeld where one of the characters whitened their teeth too much? Was it Kramer in Seinfeld or was it Ross in Friends? Or was it both? I don't know. No, I think Kramer he fell asleep on the sunbed, but I think Ross in Friends whitened his teeth too much, and so his teeth were over white and also oversensitive. What's the risk? What's the percentage risk of out of 100 patients, how many are going to have a sensitivity issue?
You're asking me a question I can't answer. I know there's no hard and fast rule at the end of the day. It's like patients will ask, how white are my teeth going to go? You don't know. How long is it going to last? Well, you don't know. How long is it going to take? Yeah, don't really know. It's not whitening, unfortunately. This is why it's kind of a round peg in a square hole with dentistry. It doesn't kind of fit because it's not exact. The reality is we know what the boundaries are. And generally, most patients probably won't get sensitivity, but I can't tell you which one because I don't know. You're not going to damage the enamel. No, it's fairly safe. You're not going to really damage the gums. You might get some sensitivity on gums or burning if you haven't got the right processes in place. It's just highly researched, often misunderstood at the end of the day. So there's no hard and fast rule about it, David. There really isn't.
Right. How much of the whitening gel gets ingested, Stephen?
Well, if you've got a really poor whitening tray, more than it probably should. And we can have a separate conversation about whitening trays. Very little at the end of the day. I wouldn't advocate drinking a pint of it, but it's not going to harm you. It's not going to do you any damage. I'm glad you brought that up there, because one of the main three reasons why you have poor outcomes, and one of the compliance is one, selecting the right gel strength. But the other one is whitening trays. I can almost guarantee bad trays, bad outcomes. If you haven't got a gingival barrier on your whitening tray, if you haven't got high quality trays made by a technician, you run the risk of saliva ingress into the whitening tray. And that's a killer for great whitening. It's one thing that we need to be very much aware of. So you should never skimp as a practice even though it's just teeth whitening trays, never skimp on your trays. It can be a huge problem. It's a little bit scientific to go into the reasons why, but it involves a very powerful enzyme, and that doesn't work well with peroxide effectively.
Interesting, because so many dentists like to cut corners and make the trays themselves, and so they're actually shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, 100%. It's, I'll see trays in a practice. And so don't get me wrong, some practices are great. They make super trays. They've got a highly skilled, team member or technician. That's amazing. Look after them. But I've often it can be a false economy. My opinion is that dental laboratories in Australia perhaps charged a little too much in the past. Dental practices will go, as you said, David, cut a few corners, buy my own suck down machine, buy some blanks, get my nurse to make the trays. And I would often ask the nurse, how long did it take to make the trays? Oh, about an hour, if we got it right. And then we have to have another go. It's just a false economy. So as a dental technician, highly skilled one, 20 minutes trays are done, scalloped, beautifully presented, and off they go to the practice. So trays are important. Yeah, I understand why it's been done, but yeah, very, very important. Just say to practice owners, check your trays.
I guess with 3D printers and now scanners, that should be a thing of the past, as opposed to taking impressions, pouring up models and shutdowns. That's very old school.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it'll come full circle as the cost of 3D printers comes down. Practices will buy 3D printers and are doing so now, which that's only what our lab would do, is use a 3D printer. And as long as you've got the technology set up, the software correctly programmed, it's going to produce exactly the same thing. Therefore, you don't need to then have a lab. The 3D printer can do exactly what the labs are doing now. So I think it will come full circle. How long that will take, don't know. We probably, at our lab in Brisbane, we probably get about 5% now would be impressions or even models still. And that's a different conversation. And the rest, they're all STL scan files.
Scanning is a whole new level for both patients and for dentists. I guess if you're going to be doing a lot of whitening, it's simple. And once the scan's done, it's done. If they lose a tray or it breaks, you don't have to get them in. Just place your order. You're doing some, maybe we can organise.
I remember.
You remember what?
I remember years ago when we first did the ortho courses, I was taught how to pour up models, and it's not a pleasant thing. So it's really hard. And when you get alginates, you get one go. That's it. You've only got one go. Then you have to ask for another set, get the patient back in. Oh, it's a nightmare. Very difficult.
Yeah. Stephen, I guess marketing keeps changing all the time in terms of how does a dental practice make their practice the go-to place in their area for teeth whitening?
I think that, the first instance is that they actually don't need to market teeth whitening at all, apart from internally, because they've got so many existing patients. They've got, for 50 adult patients a week, you've got 3 to 4 years worth of existing patients. But I get that, you can use whitening as a leader for new patients into the practice. It's an easy one to do. It's quite a glamorous treatment plan. Same with Invisalign. APRA have made it a little bit more challenging as of September the 9th. I think this is they've done it for the right reasons, APRA. And it affects everybody in the chain, even ourselves. There's no more glamorization of the treatment or the product, which is correct. And this makes it harder for non-dental professionals, the celebrities, to glamatize the potential outcomes. But it's hamstrung the dental industry because they've got to follow the same rules, like we have to follow the same rules. And it's a nightmare. It's not tricky. So as far as marketing is concerned, be visible, be vocal in your practice. So make sure leaflets, posters, waiting room videos, that creates your subliminal marketing in the practice. And then when you know how to specifically chart tooth color over time, the secret sauce, you find your 25% of patients, then that's actually all you need to do. When it becomes for external marketing, I often believe in when you're putting your Facebook ads, your social media, your Google, whatever you're doing, too heavily the ads focus on get whiter teeth, brighten your smile. They're not focusing on any problems. They're just selling the solution straight up front. Let's find the patients who have a problem that makes the patient stop and think. We run a series of social media ads that are related to problems, maybe related to an event, but not buy whiter teeth at my dental practice. Yes, you can do it, but it's a bit lame, and you just hamstrung by price then at the end of the day. So more thinking about the outcomes for the patients. People only care about what's in it for them. What do they want to do? They want whiter teeth, but what do they want to do? They want to look more attractive. They want to have more confidence. They want to have more self-esteem. So focusing that way, as opposed to focusing on buy my products or get whiter teeth. But being visible and vocal in your own practice and having an engagement protocol with every adult patient, that's how you literally transform your whitening. You do that one thing in every adult patient consult, non-emergency, you'll change your whitening for good.
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a trick question there for our viewers and listeners, because a lot of them will think, I'm going to do whitening, so I've got to go to wedding expos and set up a whitening stand, and because all brides want to have white teeth for a wedding. That's not the answer. The answer is that every time somebody rings up and says, I need to have my teeth cleaned, there's a question you can ask them about, is it for a special event? It might be for a date, a job interview, a photo shoot, all the reasons that they think they just need them cleaned, but actually whitening would actually help them even more. Look past the first question often, and I tell my clients this all the time. The first question asked by the patient isn't the real question. The same on the phone. The first question they ask about price, that's not the real question. It's about the service. No. They want the product of what they're asking the price of. And so they get labeled as a shopper. We need an ejector seat, I think, in dental receptions. Every time a dental receptionist says that someone's a shopper, an ejector seat just flicks them into outer space, never to return, because they haven't answered the real question as to what it is. And you've helped us today to realize that there's plenty of diamonds in the practice. 25% of your patients are willing to have their teeth whitened because they want the outcome that the whitening gives them. And that's a great way, I think, to finish up today, Stephen. You've gone through the changes in legislation. You've mentioned the APRA changes, which are just interesting, to say the least, in terms of promises, because people buy expectation. But I think the important thing is that there's a lot of patients out there who want whitening, need whitening, but they just don't know how to ask the dentist about it. And so if every dentist is able to bring that question around, they'll find that plenty of patients in their practice who need the whitening, more than 2 a week.
Yeah. 100%, David. And you're so right. You've got the number one challenge is that for some reason, we don't want to talk about teeth whitening or cosmetic treatment plans. It feels a bit confrontational, a bit salesy, or the patient may think, well, you're just trying to make money out of me. That's not the truth. But we don't know how to have this conversation. So in Australia, and it's probably the world over, dental teams wait for patients to ask. Number one problem. And then you got patients who don't really want to ask. They're not really sure if they should ask. They don't know if it's available at the practice because they don't talk about it. So you've got this huge gap. And that gap is being filled by non-dental. So what we try to do is bridge that gap and teach the practice teams how to have that conversation with the patient who are already part of the practice. People think that they talk about seasonal whitening, and seasonal whitening, we always still see the spike in our sales figures in November, December, January, February, sales go up. That's just because you have more events in those warmer months. The reality is, that's event-driven whitening. And you said it yourself, wedding, hot date, new job, going on a holiday, going to the races for months. But what about these people all year round, 25% who are sat at home with a problem and they don't know what to do? It's dear Google, dear ChatGPT.
Really, really important. Stephen, I had my treatment rooms used to have posters, canvases of my cosmetic cases. And I had a patient who used to see me 4 times a year, and at the end of one appointment, she said, David, she said, do you think I'd be a suitable candidate for teeth like that? And the first words that came out of my mouth was, I'm so sorry that I haven't asked you. I just felt so embarrassed that I just thought it was something that she wasn't interested in.
Yeah.
When we prepared her teeth and she went to work, as she worked as a theatre nurse in a hospital, she said she had the temporaries on and she took a mask off after a procedure, and the doctor who she worked with regularly, just went, wow, look at your teeth. And that was just with the temporaries. So again, ask everybody, because the worst thing they're going to do is stay with the teeth they've got. That's all. But some of them will say, you know what? I've been wondering whether you did that. So I think that's really, really important. Stephen,
That's right.
what's the best way for somebody to get in touch with you if they want to find out more about teeth whitening and having it in their practice?
Yes, so they can. I'm very happy to give out my mobile number. They can call me on my direct line, which is 0416 629 015. They can email me, which is stephen@boutiquewhitening.com.au. And I'll send you the link, David. We run these audits, which are complimentary for our potential practice partners, or even practices that just want a little bit of help with their whitening. I'll send you a link where they can book a 20-minute complimentary audit with me. We'll run through what they're doing now, any friction points, the good stuff, and then perhaps a better opportunity and a better way of whitening teeth, which is less clinical time, better outcomes, and happier patients. And happy patients become referring patients.
Wonderful. Stephen, Douglas, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been great having you as a guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Really appreciate it.
Lovely.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favourite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate